order. Up first, we have the 2023 budget preview and discussion. Then, Shooty, I know you're from.
Yes, Sugar Right, Shooty. Thank you.
Shooty.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm very happy to be here for my first budget kickoff discussion. So let's get it started. So we're here tonight on June 6th, beginning our budget discussion. It's kind of hard to believe that we're already here. We're also going to, after this, talk about the long-term financial plan, and we're just going to have a little refresher about where we were with the plan last year. So staff will also be working on budget worksheets until about mid-July, and then we'll prepare a preliminary budget by August, and then by that time we'll have all of the important numbers that we need from the Carver County in order to prepare what we'll be working toward our preliminary budget, which will be due by September 19th, which will hopefully be establishing what would be our highest levy that we would ever set this year. We can't do anything higher than that. And during this time, we'll also review our long-term plan. That's the goal for that. So during October, we'll also be working on more budget reviews, rates, charges, adjustments. It's kind of a long process, as you guys all know. In November, the truth and taxation statements are sent out to property owners. The hearing for the city of Carver will be here on December 5th, where we invite the residents to come in and share their thoughts on the 23 budget and levy, and I'm sure the council chambers are full when we do that. And
Oh, it's like you've never been here.
yeah. And then on December 19th, the council considers the adoption of the 2023 budget and tax levy. So that's just kind of an outline of our calendar for the rest of this year. So right now I want to prompt you to be thinking about these 5 questions as we go through this presentation, these questions and thoughts. What are going to be the takeaways, the opportunities, the challenges, goals after listening to this presentation? At this point, what parts of the budget do you consider a priority? What areas, and then what should be considered for deferment? Are there any specific programs or services you want studied as part of the 2023 budget? Ignore number 4. And other general observations to share with the city council and staff. Number 4 is going to be with the long-term plan. I just forgot to edit that slide. So the financial position of Carver, you guys are lucky because you get to hear it here, and then our auditors are coming tonight for the regular session. So lots of finance talk. I know I was going to play music, but I didn't think that was appropriate. So.
You didn't, or Brent did?
Well,
I wasn't included in that choice.
yeah, I did consult a few people. So the city of Carver has a very responsible and systematic budgeting practice as well as a long-term financial plan. A lot of cities don't even have a 5-year long-term financial plan. This is a very important tool for assisting council with decision-making. Another financial position, as you all know, you have a AA bond rating by Standard & Poor's. What this means is it lowers your interest rates and it equals tax savings for residents. You also have some healthy fund balances, and as you likely saw during the pandemic, this allows the city to react for unplanned circumstances. All right, the general fund. 62% of the fund is supported by property tax revenue. This is from residents and businesses in Carver, and we collect these twice a year, and we should be getting our first payment very shortly. It's usually right at the beginning of July. Property tax revenue pays for many important services throughout the city: streets, planning, police, administration, and our contracted services.
Do we know if that's higher or lower than last year, that percentage?
This is off of our budget, and it's pretty well in line with what it has been.
I'll point out one thing that might seem a little different to you is we're reporting debt service as its one fund, which it is, debt service fund. So in the past, you've seen that number be around 80%, but now we're segregating the general fund. So The general fund, which you have up on the screen, would be at 62%, but that doesn't mean that you don't have additional taxes coming from other sources, the debt service fund, the street maintenance fund, etc.
So then as you'll see on this slide, we also have non-tax revenue, which your building permit, the city of Carver's building permit revenue has been doing very well, as you all know, in the last couple of years. 23% of the general fund is being driven by this building permit revenue. LGA's, state, county grants or aid is 2%, and then other fees and miscellaneous. We have some rentals and different incomes that we have here. And I just wanted to quickly update you on the year-to-date new home permits that we had out the door, in case you were wondering about that. So far, we have about 31 homes out the door. Last year, this time, we had 85, a little bit of a slower start, I think, just due to the weather. But we're really going to be starting to ramp up here.
I have a question, Lynn. Do you have examples of the transfers? It was on the bottom as 2%.
So when we're talking about transfers, that's when you're transferring money from either one fund to another, or one fund to a capital fund, like to the special capital fund, or
like internally.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
So we've traditionally, or I would say at least the last 3 or 4 years, transferred money from the special capital fund to the general fund to offset the levy impact. So it's been anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 depending on the year.
Good question. Okay. I was about shocked when I got this data. We got this slide from, I should say Brent got this slide from Carver County. This slide shows the 2022 assessment values, and what I have highlighted in the red is the value that was added for new construction in the city of Carver. That is, in case you're confused by the comma, $78 million. Last year we were at $39 million added, which I'll show you on the next slide, but I can't even, it blew me away when I saw this slide. I've never seen an increase in new construction like this. It's just crazy. So last year we had a total of 166 new construction home permits, but $78 million is just, there's a lot of things going on in Carver, and you guys should be very proud of it. So as you can see here, this number of new construction value added, it nearly doubled. It went up by 99.8%. So it went up $38 million in 1 year. I'll just let that sink in for a minute. All right.
I have I don't really, kind of like, my observation would be, is part of that, like, a lot of this was actually done a year before, or like, because isn't where
Yes.
it's a new home, you're paying on the value of the lot. Correct. So it isn't like the big jump started in 2020, was it?
Right. So
okay.
Good. This is based on October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. That's kind of, how we're kind of behind when you're talking assessment values. So this is the time period that we're talking about.
That plus, right, if they're in, let's just say like a $350,000 house, the first year, they're probably paying taxes on the value of the lot, not the $350,000. And I don't know that it's always exactly a year, but
correct.
It's like a lay, we don't see those numbers until.
So I think what you're trying to say is like even next year it might be bigger.
That and two, and like, it's just a different representation, because like in 2019 it would have been bigger if the county was collecting the tax.
Correct.
But yeah, there's definitely the trend.
Yes.
Yeah, you've been seeing interesting to see the 2017 to 18 kind of flat.
So most of you should have received your 2023 valuation notice. I know that mine out in Watertown went up individually. Mine increased by 20% on my own home. Carver County Assessor's Office is indicating that median residential property values are exceeding 20%. Some are even close to 30%. These increases are higher than anything that the county has experienced in recent memory. And I just want to call out that Minnesota statute calls for property to be assessed at the market value. And then often this is a misconception that people think that it's 75 to 80% of what their house could be sold at. And so Carver County, actually, if you go to their website, the property tax and assessments, and you just kind of search up property assessments, they've dedicated an entire page actually to home valuations this year just because this is a really hot topic. And just like I said before, this is based on October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. They also are showing that higher valued homes are increasing more rapidly than lower valued homes. And any concerns with your valuation can be brought to the assessment office. So 2022 final city tax rates on an estimated tax on a $328,500 home. Out of the 11 benchmark cities in Carver County, Carver sits on the lower half of that at $1,553. That's just for the city portion of that tax. And we're right in between Mayor and Waconia. And there I updated this with the populations, and I used the Met Council estimates. So there's quite a range of estimate populations there of the two towns that we sit in between, but I'd say we're sitting pretty good on that lower half. Just a little recap of our debt service. As Brent mentioned, our debt service levy we collect that and it's already assigned to pay off our debt. So it's not like we're using it as revenue. We're taking it and we're paying our debt off. And here is a list of our general fund debt that we have. As you can see, the 2010A refunding is falling off the debt schedule for 2023. And also, it will be the last year for the 2015B refunding payment. So in 23, the total debt service is decreasing by about $178,000 from 2022.
And then next year it's gonna go down another 102,000.
Correct. With
Got
that 2015B falling down. Yep. And this is just it's too early to determine the general fund levy at this point, but we can at least take a look at the percent change trend that we've had from 2018 to 2022, and then we know what our debt service levy will be. There hasn't been a real constant pattern with the percent change of the levy, but. So why does your tax bill change?
Sorry, Emily, can I just go back?
yeah.
Did you get that number just based on what's in our budget that has to carry over, with like 0 changes for the 2023 draft number?
That is just what is from this debt service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
got it.
that's
Sorry,
the only number that we can for sure 100% know what.
Got it. I misread that. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. So why does our tax bill change? We talked a little bit about some of these market value changes, special assessments, local levy changes, school district voter approved referendums, and legislative changes. What's changing in Carver for 2023? We talked about that market value increase. So a $328,000 home, an average valued home, is going up about 25% in Carver to $410,800. The new construction value went from 39 million up to 78 million. The estimated population, updated from the Met Council population, is going from 5,800 up to 6,200. And I left the number of new homes at what we're estimating because 2022 is not over yet. We're hoping to construct 120 new homes in both 22 and 23. So some early on 2023 budget priorities. Importantly, we want to maintain our current service levels in the city of Carver. We want to continue providing the residents of Carver top-notch customer service, great infrastructure, and beautiful amenities. We want to allow for the implementation of the adopted strategic plan priorities that council worked on. We want to use reasonable estimates for the unknown budgeted items. This means we want to do our best to estimate the expenses for 2023 that do not have a set cost. We need to reflect a 3% staff wage increase according to the collective bargaining agreement. And continue to follow the long-term financial plan. Yes?
Step 4, bullet point 4, those are 2-year budget programs, right? Or was that negotiated this year early?
This is the last year, so, or, no, this is the first year of the new contract, so we're covered for 2023 and we'll negotiate 2024 in 2023.
Got it, all right.
Some preliminary 2023 budget considerations. If you remember, I talked about that $184,000 coming off of our debt schedule. An idea is to keep that debt gap committed to a use for future potential debt service. Use it as a relief, as an opportunity for something else during 23 while keeping a placeholder for future debt service in case it is needed in the future to avoid any kind of large swings in the levy. We're in year 2 already of the pavement management plan next year. This will increase the levy for the pavement management from $220,000 to $320,000. There are no new full-time positions planned next year because the admin assistant position was filled by Natalie. And there's been talk about developing a local emergency management plan. There's also been discussions about getting new accounting and utility billing software to replace Banyan. And we've also had early discussions about the Southwest Prime budget level. On the horizon budget topics, those economic factors. We're going to continue to watch rates and how they affect new home construction numbers and everything else. Overall operational budget increases due to inflation. I mean, this is everything from the chemicals that are used, you know, in the water treatment. This is road salt. I mean, everything is affected by that. So we just need to keep an eye on it. Planned capital improvement transfers. You know, be strategic about how we're moving our money around and doing transfers between funds. And then also anticipating that market value increase throughout the community, as well as strong growth from that new construction. So hopefully I got you kind of thinking about those questions that I wanted to ask. And hopefully we can help answer some of your questions, or even just if you guys want to provide some feedback on these 4 items: the opportunities, challenges, what are your priorities, what programs would you like us to study, or what are your just general observations. We're happy to try to help or bring back more information, whatever you need.
Great. Should we just start with number 1 and go around?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what are your takeaways, opportunities, challenges, goals, etc. after listening to the presentation? You look like you want to go first, Kristen.
Oh, I was looking, no, okay, but I will, great. So we're talking a lot about inflation here, and inflation, when we talk about the city, obviously we have things that are going up in our costs, but I think we really, this year especially, be cognizant of what homeowners are gonna have to pay for when it comes to taxes, because it's, I mean, we all feel it, right? We all feel it at home. So I wanna be really cognizant when we're looking at what might be added this year. Because I think this is gonna be a tough year. I mean, this is gonna be a tough next year with inflation. I do want a little bit more explanation on keep the debt gap of 184 committed. Committed to future potential debt service. So does that mean we're saying we don't want to spend 184,000 because we want to keep the debt gap? Help me understand what that is.
Yeah, I think the question is more like thinking about some of your capital projects. So I'll mention like the public services garage and the fire department building addition, or fill in the gap any other ones you have. You know, we have plenty of projects. You know, we add $100,000 to the street maintenance budget, and all of a sudden that's 100,000 and then 184. There's a strategy for that 84,000, you could say, well, we know we're gonna have at some point the year to be confirmed by the council, this building project. You could take that 84,000 and say, we're gonna put that towards getting the plans and specifications done for that building, so we don't have to do an interfund loan. We'll just have that, and then when that 84,000 comes up in 2024, along with the 100,000 in the following year with that debt coming off, you'd say, well, I have 184,000 now that I can put towards the debt service, and that might reduce the impact that someone has in that given year. Or you can say, you know what, I'm gonna worry about kind of the clear stuff right now, and so we're gonna commit to what we have in 2023, and if we can provide some additional tax relief, we're gonna have that full question that whatever that debt service would be on that building or that piece of equipment or that street project at the time it occurs. So it's about trying to see what the council prefers. So some cities will choose, or councils will choose to say, you know, we want to keep that static, where it's going to be that same $100 worth of property taxes. Or you could say, well, it's going to drop to 80, and then in the next year we're going to have a question where it could go up by 25. You know, and so it's just a matter of how you want it. And there's shades of gray in that. So at some point, at least for tonight, we want to get you thinking about it. Doesn't mean you have to say, no, I want it this way or want it that way. But, you know, this is as you mentioned, this is a really strategic year for how you want to manage the operating budget and then future capital. And so part of it is just how you want that represented, kind of the communication behind it, and not getting ahead of yourself on capital projects that aren't approved, but then knowing that you could have them stacked on top of each other. There are a lot of layers there, so, but that's kind of the essence of it.
Okay, so when I initially think about this and look at this for a debt gap, when I'm looking at it, I don't think of it as like here and, oh, we dropped down to here, let's get ourselves back up to here. This isn't an amount of money that we have like sitting in a bank. This
Right.
is money that we have paid off, right? And that's a good thing to do, is obviously pay our things off. So for me, I don't want to look at it like, oh, that's like a credit card to me. Like, oh, I've got this much left on my balance on my credit card. I can pay it up to that and, you know, charge it up to that. So I just want to be really careful. I'm not saying that we should say, oh, great, we're not going to spend any of our debt gap, but I don't want to think of it as like the maximum amount on your credit card. So now that we paid it down, we're going to shoot it right back up and start all over again, if we don't have to. That's my initial thoughts.
Do you want to, would it be easier, you guys, just to do a brain dump and answer all the questions and not, was that your brain dump for everything?
Oh, maybe, I don't know, do you want to just do one question at a time?
Okay, let's keep doing one question at a time. Okay, key takeaways, Glenn.
I just want the budget heads to be very cognizant of inflation this year.
The department heads.
Everybody in the
when
budget.
they're bringing their budgets forward.
Yes. Reason is this is gonna hit everybody in Carver. Inflation isn't the 4% or the 8% that they're claiming. It's about double, almost triple that. Every household is gonna hit at least $4,000 to $6,000 in gas alone this year. So keep that in mind, what everybody else is gonna be going through when you're putting budgets together. If it's a want, I want wants and needs separated out. Just to be very cognizant of everything that's going in. Yes, we have our debt service and everything that we need to pay, but as far as frills, I want it to be very tight. That's my biggest takeaway.
Joy?
I like the idea of thinking about interest rates and how they affect new home construction numbers, just kind of as we think about the next several of years. I do agree, inflation is going to have a big impact on everybody's budgets over the next at least 12 months. So I think we want to be cognizant with that. You know, I think we have another agenda item to talk about the long-term plan, so I think that that's a good opportunity to flesh through what's in 23 versus 24, et cetera, because I know we spend a lot of time looking at that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that local emergency management plan that was on the two slides.
Yeah, I can take that. It's kind of something that I'm trying to kind of kick off is, so our emergency management plan is essentially 2 big binders that Carver County has, and Kelly's in here too.
Uh-huh.
But it kind of occurred to me, I think it was, I don't know if it was last summer or this past spring, when we were supposed to get this like terrible winds, right? In like the middle of winter. December.
Oh, okay.
And we don't really have like a local strategy for that. So that what really occurred was me sending a text to Callie and Chad, and we kind of communicated. And the reason that worked was because we all happened to kind of be in the city and at the same time, as far as like communicating, and we all heard the same weather reports, etc. What I'm looking to do is bring in somebody, facilitate a conversation with all our stakeholders, the council included, and have a very condensed, this is what we're going to do in a tornado, this is what we're going to do in a fire, this is what we're going to do if we got to relocate people downtown, that sets certain levels that don't rely as heavily as we are now on just frankly our collective experience, that it's evergreen.
Hey.
Where we could just hand it and someone would say, okay, I'm the council member, this is going to be my role, or I'm the mayor, or I'm the city manager, I'm the fire chief. Right now we have this overwhelming document that's really, you can apply to any city, but with that there's no specificity with that, where it's like, well, how does that align with Carver locally, our resources, our staff, our facilities, there's pieces that we'd involve like finance for like cutting checks, and I just want to get that all written down and planned, around the table. And so I've been communicating with folks in that industry probably for the last 2 or 3 months. It's we're probably, if you wanted to move forward with it, it's probably more in the range of like 8 to 10,000 than the number
15
that we
to 20?
had, than 15 to 20. But that's what we started with, because it's better to overestimate those numbers than surprise you at the end.
Right. Okay, well, good. Thank you for explaining that, because I know you've mentioned it before, but now I'm putting the two together.
But essentially it's for those of us that grew up in the 90s, it's a Cliff Notes version of a local emergency management plan that we can follow.
Disaster recovery in the business world. Okay. Those are my comments on number 1.
Lori?
For my takeaways, I liked the slide on the 5 bullet points for the 2023 budget priorities, especially the first one, maintain current service levels. I think that aligns with what I think too, just maintaining the current, kind of what Glenn said about, not the year to be adding things, even though there's so many like amenities, things that we think we like, but I also feel that the departments have done a good job of really keeping it to what we need. But definitely this is the time to still evaluate, to look at that. So challenges, that reasonable estimates for unknown budget items, I think every household, business, government entity. But I like that we're thinking about it. Don't really know if there's an answer what that is, because we just can't be flexible, but yet, is there a way we can react to, if there is something, really way over budget in one area that we didn't foresee. So, yeah, I guess we just need guidance on that, what do we have for options? So that as I see as a challenge. So those are my takeaways.
Thank you. For me, I think that new home valuation, the new home construction was really significant, and thank you for pointing that out, because the context of what it was the previous year didn't necessarily strike me when I read the packet. I think challenges, everybody's already mentioned it, but and I say this a lot, as you'll learn, is looking into that crystal ball and figuring out what 2023 is going to mean for inflation, for everybody, for road salt, for hoses for, lawyer stuff, And you guys were all really clear about, really sharpening the pencil. We've done this a time or two, and we're always looking to have a really tight budget. So that's not really anything new. I think the urgency and I think the pressure to make sure that we've got a tight budget is more important now than ever, but I think we've always done a really good job, and I think that trust level is there with the department heads in delineating out the wants, which we never see the light of day, and then the needs, which is what we kind of horse trade and talk about as we get further along in this process. Number 2, at this point, what parts of the budget do you consider a priority, and what areas should be considered for deferment? Glenn, you want to start this one off?
I want to see our street improvements as a priority, just to keep and maintain healthy streets. Deferment, I haven't thought too much about it other than a piece of equipment that I spoke to Brent about earlier today. Other than that, that's about it. I want to keep the infrastructure so that we can continue to grow and yet do it lean. That's my concern.
All right. Laura, you want to go next?
Priority, anything with infrastructure, and just maintaining current level of service. Anything with public safety. Anything with employee retention. That. Consider for deferment. I like the wording on that. Just kind of get us like brainstorming or thinking. I also feel that things would be brought to us, but for me, it's some of the donations like we have, and I might have called it the wrong thing, but and then same with like subsidizing for prime. But just kind of knowing what it kind of again like what's optional. So that's where I sit with that question.
I also feel strongly about the pavement management plan. Let's keep it funded. If we can accelerate it even, that would be ideal, though I understand all the other constraints we are, and I think we do have a really good plan to add to it every year. So we're gonna get over this in a few years. It's just, maybe I'm impatient. Just, okay.
Or your street's really crummy.
My streets are crummy, and I hear the complaints, and I get it. So, but I know we have a plan to address all of it. But yeah, it is a priority, I think. And again, just kind of the budget priorities around service levels. So really, a lot of things I think that we normally have in our budget to really maintain the parks and the streets and the plowing and the police and the fire, all of those service levels I think are really highly valued based upon the surveys that we've done with the city. So keeping those up. I don't have any specifics on the deferment because I know we're going to talk about the long-term financial plan, debt service, and things like that.
Chrissy?
Same thing with the pavement management plan. We worked hard on that. I don't want to see that falter at all. This is a question before I go further though. So look, I'm with inflation because obviously inflation for everything we've been talking about, but even with new homes, right? So we know that bank loans for your homes are going to go up too with inflation. So I'm starting to get nervous that we're going to see the housing market starting to drop a little bit. What year would we see, like let's say for 2023, if we kind of, the housing market, I'm not going to say tanked, but it started really slow, what year would we see that coming back to us? 20?
It'd be it's always think in terms of partial. So even if your home's not finished, the assessor might assess it at 30% complete and then give you a 30% value. So I was, a home that, let's just say 2022, I'm not gonna look. 2022, we had no additional permits. It would be impacted in 23 partially.
Okay.
But as Lynn, stated, it's October 1st through.
Yep, September 30th. Okay.
So it's kind of a moving scale, but you're typically like a year behind.
Yeah, okay.
But we traditionally, taken a very conservative approach to estimating, our building permits. Because, cities, in some cases, are really aggressive with that, and then when that does happen, not to say it wouldn't happen to us, but then all of a sudden it's, they're trying to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars to, fill a budget gap because they're having to make cuts, and so we've tried to mitigate that. We've tried to align our local government aid with, one-time projects so that if there's a cut to local government aid, which is reduced to the city every year just based on our size and other factors. But I think it's right around 2000, right before I came here in 2009, the city had some pretty big cuts related to local government aid being cut. So just kind of a little bit of a background to that. Long answer to your short question.
Speaking of LGA, do you hear anything coming down the grapevine that it's gonna change? As our population, I don't know what the cutoff marks are for when they start changing your dollar amount.
Yeah, it's a very complex formula based on pre-1940s housing accidents. There's like a lot of widgets in that little formula. So anything that'll happen will be incremental. Nothing as far as transformational program changes that I've been made aware of anyway.
Okay, since we're kind of just on the first rung of talking about the budget, I don't have anything for deferment or anything else right now. I'm sure that'll come soon, but not yet.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I kind of consider like everything that's in recent memory, which I know you're up to speed on, continue through, so the payment management plan. I think we need to continue to fund Prime to meet the needs of our community. I think we've talked about this before, but Prime is not just a transportation service, but it's a economic driver. We're talking about, Brent has said that he's talked to folks who are talking about developing and, we're never gonna get I'll use an outdated brand name, we're never gonna get a Kmart because we don't have folks who can work in our community. So much like we're working on the affordable housing aspect of it, I think we need to support that kind of thing with transportation. So for me, it's important that we continue to make sure that that's funded appropriately. I don't know that I have any other priorities. I do not want to see, and I know it's not for 2023, but I do not want to see the public services fire station improvements deferred again or beyond 2024. So that's a real early comment for a previous year's or a future year's budget. But I think that's the only strong feelings I have in the deferment category at this point. All right, moving on to number 3. Any specific programs or services you want studied as part of the 2023 budget? You'll go first this time, Joy.
I don't know that I have anything else. Well, we're gonna talk about Southwest Prime. Did we talk about becoming part of the transit district thing?
So can you ask that in a different way?
So Southwest Transit, we were gonna talk about funding for that, but were we also gonna look at participating in changing our tax?
That wasn't on my radar as far as joining it.
Okay.
When
was the last time we talked about it?
Oh, man. Very informally.
Somewhat recently, Aaron did it within the last year.
Yeah, but it wasn't a kind of like, this is the transit taxing district.
Yeah.
When we talked about that, Mike Webb was the mayor, so it was.
Okay, so that was.
And Arlene McCarthy was the kind of the head of Metro Transit, and that position has changed over a couple times. And we can fill in some of those blanks when Southwest Transit comes out. My understanding is that the Transit Taxing Authority has little to do with Prime. Prime is.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
I know, but I assume it would also have something, it would have an impact on our budget. As well.
The transit taxing district?
Yeah, or our residents.
Would it have an impact on residents?
On residents. Okay.
it's a direct
Yeah.
from the,
Okay. It's
so
another
Line
line item
item
like
and
your
taxes.
school and your,
Correct.
Yeah.
okay.
correct.
Can we find out what that number is
For,
if we were to,
oh, sure.
for fun?
Anything else?
That sounds, yes, lots of fun.
Okay. Anything else, Joy?
No.
Okay. Lori?
Are we on question 2?
No, we're on
Three.
3.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you surprised me with the change in the order.
I'm trying to mix it up.
You mixed it up. Program service we want studies part of 2023. No, because we're already doing it. The green cities, we got the pavement plan. Feel really confident with that. No, but I also feel that we've got just that ongoing communication and these work sessions to bring something up. So I don't have anything new today.
Go on, nothing, Kristen?
I do have one, I had this as a part of my update, but I feel like it's better here, so, you likely remember maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we changed our pay scale system from a step program to a open range system where we set, the minimum and maximum pay for each position. And so, one of the things that we do that's contained within the collective bargaining agreement is we update that scale on an annual basis. And this is where it gets kind of take a deep breath. This is based on the CPI for each year. And so it's a bigger number. We just did the calculation. And so it doesn't necessarily impact anyone's individual pay because they're within that open range. Think about it as, basement and attic, right? They're in that space. But it's an 8% increase to that. So where it does affect an individual's pay, and we usually have the council consider this outside of the budget, is that 8%, if someone is at entry level pay in their pay grade, then that 3% is going to be eclipsed by that 8% change. So they'd be getting an additional 5% on top of that 3, because you can't have anyone making below the minimum for their pay grade. So Linda and I have talked about it at length, and she's working on some calculations related to what that impact will be, which we'll show you at the time, but just wanted to kind of get you thinking about that in advance of that actually coming to the council. So we'll bring it to a work session, get you comfortable with the concepts, answer questions, and then eventually take it to a regular meeting. But I just wanted to kind of get that out there in the space and let you react to it or ask questions.
Sorry, what's our trigger for that again? What triggered us to do that, to get to the, with the 8%?
So it's a provision that we have agreed to. It's in our collective bargaining
Is it? Okay.
agreement. So you don't necessarily need to do it for non-union staff, but that's been the tradition. But that was kind of the concession to get away from the STEP program, and then, just kind of going back another step. We used to do steps, and then we'd negotiate cost of living or COLA increases, which became really kind of cumbersome and wonky based on, the COLA was negotiated even though cost of living or CPI is an actual number. And so, and it was applied to everyone. So if there was a 5% cost of living increase and then a 3% step increase, then it would be 8%, and then it would just kind of keep compounding. And when we switched over to the system, we said, well, we're just going to change, again, the floor and the ceiling, and that way it's more representative of it, even though you are subject, on that lower or entry level pay, and we happen to be in a position where we have brought on quite a few new folks and they're at entry level pay. We'll get the data. On the plus side, we've had a couple of folks that were bumping their heads against the ceiling they were challenged with that, and so if there's a silver lining into it, it kind of brings that ceiling up so that people aren't going to be mitigated. We had, in one instance, I think 2 years ago, we had someone eligible for a 3% increase, but they could only receive 2.25% because they hit the max pay for their position. So again, there's a lot of nuance and context to that, but just wanted to kind of get that out.
So does that come up then with our renegotiation, or is that outside of that? when we renegotiate on 2020, like next year for the next year?
Yes, we could. You could say, well, we are gonna set a cap on what that CPI is gonna be. You can do really anything.
Okay. I'm just saying, so, because the collective bargaining agreement is the trigger for us doing this. So does it
Correct.
just go in line then with our negotiation process every 2 years?
Yeah, we have that conversation about that provision and really.
Every 2
anything.
years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, for me, specific programs or services I want studied, I have in here Prime, I already spoke about that. I would like to see a number to do maybe a couple times a year, a yard waste cleanup option to work with the service that the Shakopee Minnewakan have. Or maybe it's a spring cleanup and a fall cleanup where everybody brings all their brush and stuff to a parking lot in community park or somewhere. I also think.
Courtney, can I ask you a question on that
yeah.
one? So aren't they building a new facility right at 41, kind of just past the river crossing?
Yeah.
What do you think about, is that too far? I mean, can we have our residents go
You
that
know-
way and save some money?
You're talking to somebody who only goes as far as the end of our driveway, because I have my garbage hauler pick it up
Mhm.
every week.
Okay.
But I never fail to be amazed at how many folks keep asking me for
Mhm.
something like that. I don't know that it's something that we need to do, but I would like to see what the number is, and I understand that, it may be 10 grand this year and then double next year, but I'm just curious, because I know that that's a service that's out there, and I would just like to figure out what those numbers are.
Yeah, and I'm great with looking at the numbers. It's always good to have the information. When it's just down 41, that's a little bit like, okay.
Yeah, I would argue that if you have a fall yard cleanup, I don't have a trailer to carry bags of leaves down 41, and, 41 is like just over the river,
Mhm.
but 7
Yeah.
miles away, right? So,
I know, I just have mine picked up too, so this is a little bit foreign concept for me to have to like haul it somewhere.
I get it. So,
Okay.
I'm not saying that I'm in favor with it and that I will die on the hill of yard waste cleanup, but I would like to see the numbers. I think the other thing that we need to consider, Lori touched on it a little bit in terms of wanting to do whatever we can for employee retention. I think we've all indirectly touched on it a little bit, indirectly in talking about inflation. As an employer, I think we need to keep in mind what we can do for folks. If folks are gonna spend $8 grand a year in gas to get to these jobs that we as the employer are doing, I think we need to consider what we can do, and I think, I truly don't know what I want yet, nor do I know what can we do especially with the union agreement, but, and I know that it's not a step program anymore, but I think, a 3% increase in 2023 is gonna be a little short of what folks need to be doing to keep keeping up with the times, so I think we need to keep that in mind. So I just wanna plant that seed as kind of a priority that I'd like to look into to see if that's even a possibility again with the union, and how that would work, but give, you a little bit more of a pool when you're thinking of increases for folks.
Well, they'll take more money.
I bet they will.
And they should.
I mean, tongue in cheek,
All things,
yes.
but like all
Yeah.
things considered, I don't wanna see Steve, again, using a name that I'm pretty sure doesn't exist, crossing the street because they can make
Yes.
more money working for Chaska.
Yep.
So, that's it for me. Number 4, other general observations. Anybody can go first this time. Nothing else?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you get what you need from
I
us?
certainly did, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so next.
Okay, guys, don't laugh at my glasses. I just broke them, so I had to tape the piece on the bottom. It's really nice.
Let me get my camera.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you told us,
So
because I
let's-
wouldn't have noticed on my own.
Oh, no, you'll notice. You'll notice. It's bad. I didn't have any super glue at the time, and it's, yeah. There's a piece of tape on them. It's classy. But the lens flew out. Okay.
Oh, you were in rough shape.
Okay.
If they're a 1.0, I have a pair you could wear.
Do you?
Readers?
They are one.
Are they readers or prescription?
They're readers, but I can't read that anymore. And I use a 1.0. Those are Yes, thank you, Courtney.
Oh, I think I do, now wait.
Oh, I'll see when.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Go ahead, let's
No,
go.
you're-
Well, this is kind of old people comical intro here, yeah.
I just got
I don't know.
Here, bifocals. and
I need the glasses on to see.
Oh, I know, it's progressive.
Do you need them for your own?
No.
Okay, sorry. I
Not
don't
today, in
have
the mornings more.
See you. Oh, that's wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's sixes.
There's sixes, we'll hold it over there on the wall.
All right, so this brings us to the 2023 long-term financial plan and capital improvement fund discussion. So again, I have talked about these questions. So at the end, we'll just want to ask you guys, what are the biggest challenges with the long-term financial plan and CIP? What are you most excited about? What are your feelings on building a capital equipment fund versus using equipment certificates, which is debt, every few years? Are there any specific pieces of equipment or improvements that you want to see added or removed, or you need additional information on? And then other general observations that you would like to share with City Council and staff. So our utility bill is paid by residents, and these drive the enterprise fund budgets, basically. This is our revenue, this is our moneymaker, and property taxes do not pay for these utility services. And this is water, sewer, and stormwater. This is how we drive a lot of how we plan, and our rates determine our utility bills and our revenues. And here are our 2023 preliminary utility rate increases. Just to give you kind of a better visual, I'm sure you all know kind of what a bill looks like for the city of Carver, but an average 2,000 gallon usage water bill is about $51.30. And with these current preliminary utility rate increases, it would be about $52.76. So that's $1.46. And like I said, these are very, very preliminary.
And just to kind of highlight that point, so what you're looking at in the long-term plan and the rates that Lynn just referred to, it's all based on your current plan. And so this is the kickoff to our exercise to review and revise and confirm priorities. So nothing in here is proposed new that you haven't heard. This is refreshing your memory on what our current plan says. And so we're hoping for you to say how you feel about that today, things you want us to look at. So at some point in the next few months, we'll come back to you with the updated document. And a lot of it might look the same. Some of it might look a little different based on what staff has looked at, based on the comments that we get from you here tonight.
Thank you. So preliminary 2023 long-term financial plan considerations. I heard this in the first presentation. Evaluate departmental needs versus wants. Determine if equipment is due for replacement, based on mechanical issues, or is it the newer, bigger, better item that we want? Address the timing of projects to determine when they best align with funding. Does it make sense to push back items to a further year so that we can package it into a bond? For instance, take out an equipment certificate along with a building or infrastructure project bond. So then you're getting your better interest rate, a bigger bond, lower payment. We're also going to be reviewing our current plan 2022 through 2026 and gathering feedback. And then also we need to consider applying the inflationary estimates to projects for years 24 through 27. If we just leave them how they are, our plan isn't going to support those numbers. We're going to be very underfunded. A $1 million project that we threw out there in 2025, 5 years ago, isn't going to be $1 million anymore. That's what I mean by that. So I handed out, this is just so that we know to go to our handout that I gave you. And this is the long-term financial, this is actually just the capital plan. This is the equipment and projects portion of what was adopted and kind of evaluated from you guys last year. So this doesn't have anything new added to it. We haven't added anything, taken anything off, revised anything on this. So this is what we'll be kind of talking about. So on the horizon for the 2023 long-term financial plan, we've had just some early discussions. Obviously, Third Street Bridge project, the levy project funding and timing updates, generators and fiber upgrades, public services and the fire department building addition plans, and then a DNR fire department tanker. We want to talk about our cash flow strategies, analyze the utility rates to support current and future projects, making sure that we can pay for everything that we're planning to pay for, to buy. We want to monitor debt levels and maturities, and then look at the timing of all of these projects. I talked about this before, package it together if the debt is necessary, if it makes sense. So this was just a snapshot, a quick overview of the long-term financial plan. We will be updating the long-term financial plan soon. So what do you think is our biggest challenge? What are you most excited about? What are your feelings on building a capital equipment fund? What I mean by that is starting to save money, starting to really save money and plan. You know, maybe using that $184,000 in debt service that's coming off, put it into the capital fund, equipment fund, and just let it sit there until we need to use it. Are there any specific pieces of equipment or improvements you want to see added or removed, or what can we give you more information on? And then other general observations that you'd like to share with staff or the rest of the council.
All right, guys, so taking a look at the time, we have 20 minutes for this, but I want to give it enough time, so I'm fine if you are, Lynn, with letting it carry over into the other, like we'll stop this meeting, but we can continue to talk about it later on in the meeting, so.
You wanna stop right here, or
No,
stop as we talk?
no, we've got 20 minutes, but I do want to make sure we have a break in between meetings.
Absolutely.
So let's do it like we did with the last meeting. Let's just start with number one and go around the horn. What about the current long-term financial plan CIPs, our biggest challenge, and what are you the most excited about? So you want to go first?
Sure. CIP, the long-term financial plan doesn't excite me because it's a lot of money. No, I'm not really excited. Maybe if I could ask just a couple of clarifications from 2023. So it says, I thought you said that we weren't planning on hiring any staff in 2023, but it says there's a permit tech admin on here.
That's the current plan.
This is
Okay,
the current, yeah.
right, but so that will be taken
Yeah.
off?
Yep.
Okay. You know what, when we're talking about I know Courtney, you already brought up the fire station and that, turnout gear building addition. I also don't wanna see that pushed back. I don't think that, to me, it's a big dollar amount, but that's something to me that I think is fairly important that we should keep in here when we're looking forward. I have another question for Brent, but for the CASA 40 turnback, I know that we're gonna require the county to do some of the upgrades on that road, but we have 850,000 in here. What is the intent for 850,000 for it?
It's a placeholder, because we just don't really know what that's gonna be yet, and so, you know, there are different ways to go about it without getting too much into the detail. I mean, you could, instead of having the county do a project and the city doing a project together, you could essentially just, we'd have to work out what that number is, but we could just get the money from the county to do a project at a future date, based on the specifics of what we wanted to do. But without having a real clear-cut number, that's the number that Dan recommended to put in there as a placeholder, but,
Okay.
you know, there are a number of components that we might wanna take on, and we want to be able to plan for those options rather than having you say, well, we wanna look at those options and then say, well, we don't have anything built into our plan to consider that, so it's a long strategy. You have to, you and the rest of the council have to tell us, like, I can't even imagine a scenario where I even want to consider that, and then we can adjust accordingly.
Okay. So I guess the biggest challenge I have in the 2023 is that, I mean, it's a lot of public services equipment, and I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that this isn't something that Chad, needs at some point, but I'm wondering if all of it is needed, if there's any of those, to hold us over a little bit longer for some of these things, it's something we can rent. I mean, is it something that we can, I don't wanna say maybe borrow from, City of Chaska, but pay them of something that it doesn't end up being our own, that we have to purchase it, maintain it, all that kind of stuff. So, that's just one of the challenges for me looking at that, is there's a lot in there for public works. And although it's, a lot of them are little pieces, but there's a lot of little pieses add up, right?
Do you mind if I add a little something, because I think it will help us on our end, because it alludes to the second question that Lynn had here is, so we've routinely kind of every 2 to 3 years done an equipment certificate, and so our strategy has been to like group this equipment. And Lynn brought up a good point too, it's like, well, when you do that, one, you have this one year of, you have a lot, but then two, when you have your equipment in buckets like that, eventually the equipment might tend to fall apart in the same years, where you need to replace because of their life cycle. So getting feedback from the council of, how comfortable, within a range do you feel about kind of a both and, where you maybe do a smaller equipment certificate, but you start building a capital equipment fund. We've done the same thing with streets, because you could theoretically, you could bond for streets, but the council said, no, we'd rather pay cash and build that fund. So again, not right now, but as we start thinking about this, and if you have thoughts as we go through these next few months of would I support some type of investment into equipment so that it isn't maybe so overwhelming looking at this whole big list. So I just wanted to add that context before you finished your thoughts.
Okay. Because the storage building for public services is also in 2023. We just don't have to fill it all up right away.
Sorry, Chad.
Yeah. No, but we do have some big facility additions that we are considering, and so that is probably the biggest challenge for me, because those are some big numbers. Those are hefty numbers. That puts us over $1.5 million around there. So that's all I have. But
I agree with Chris's assessment. The only thing that I really looked at was on the equipment is the brush chipper.
me too. I got it.
I was like, do we really need the chipper? But we are gonna have some outlay, and we do need to have a little bit of growth and make room for that equipment that we're gonna be getting. It's a tough pill right now, but anyway, what I meant by sharpen your pencil, that was the one that jumped out at me, Chad.
With the chipper?
Yep.
Yep.
It's a chipper.
So one of the, just kind of as a exciting preview, is we're, it probably won't sound as
This
exciting
better be
with that
exciting.
meeting, but we created a template that we use kind of internally that we're gonna kind of turn around, but it's basically, we're gonna assign a project sheet to every one of these items. That'll have the year, the estimated budget amount, and then rationale from the kind of a person assigned to it. So take the brush chipper, we'll have the year, the budget amount, Chad will write a justification in there, and then we'll have a spot for a photo. So it'll, instead of giving you all of these projects in one massive PowerPoint, you can, we're hoping to kind of add that as an appendage or an amendment, appendage, is that right?
And just like an arm.
So it would look.
Appendix item?
Phalange.
It's a chipper.
I did one, actually, an example.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
and then you do your justification, why we need it.
Could we have life expectancy added
Sure.
to the the equipment stuff?
And then a reference visual, but for
Oh.
software, I really didn't have anything, so exciting.
So isn't that exciting?
So life
It is.
expectancy.
I'm thrilled.
Okay. I forgot where we're at.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay, go
Ladies
next.
on the side, go ahead.
So challenges, yes, it does look like a lot for equipment, and utilities a little bit too. But I think it's just more the optics of it when it's all listed out. But my first thought when I see all those is that I don't want it to add more time, more staff, more maintenance. But I believe this will just maybe make the team more efficient, or like they can, get more done. And with that thought, I'd like to suggest adding that to that intake form. I know it's not what you called it, but
Yeah.
that's what I think of it as. But just because I know that helped me in some of the presentations we were talking about, like what it all takes to mow, certain areas. But kind of knowing that it's just making the team more efficient, which is helpful. What I am excited about is I feel like there's good foresight into major things that we need. We're not going to get blindsided with something. These are things that, based on history or that we foresee. We need to have the budget for. Yeah.
Sure.
I remain excited about street maintenance. I did go back through my notes about the public services storage building, and this was the short-term plan, right? This wasn't the long-term plan. This was the short-term plan to really address our more immediate storage needs as a growing city. Also help us address that property down there so that we can do something else with, right along the river there with a downtown park or something else or whatever. So I think I'd like to see that stay in our budget if we can. I do like the idea of the capital equipment, what's the word you used? Fund, thank you, fund. Just like we did the pavement management fund, it just makes sense. We constantly are needing new equipment. It's going to be a recurring expense, no doubt, and smoothing out the spending sounds better to me. Yeah, I like the idea of really reserving our bond issuances for really those one-off things, not the recurring expense.
Okay, thank you. For me, I think the challenges are, we're looking at numbers here, but with all the inflation, these are so far away from being real numbers as we're learning. And I'm a little nervous already about what the real numbers will be when we're looking at 2023 and beyond. So I think inflation is one of my biggest challenges. Also, and Lynn, we trust you and the rest of the team to do this, but work on kind of bucketing things into the years so that there isn't, so that it evens out and that there's kind of an average so that it isn't that roller coaster of a budget. Let's see. Also a challenge, I know we just refigured the park dedication arithmetic, but I think we need to figure that out again so that we can make sure that we have enough money to fund all of our projects that are coming in and that are in the plan, understanding that the growth has to kind of lead that and the role that that plays. Let's see, what I'm excited about, I think everybody around this table knows that I'm excited about the levy. Hopefully we'll continue to see that get funded from our partners. I am excited about the fire department public services addition. I want to see that. And I know Christy said she's not excited about the long-term financial plan, but I am. I like being able to say that when Brent or Chad comes to us for a brush mower or something, we can say, is that in the plan? Okay, good, done. Just being able to know that it's in there and that we planned for it and that we had the foresight to see it coming. I like having the plan that we can refer back to. Let's see, just some other, maybe we'll get to this. So let's go around with two. I think we all I think we can do this one maybe with a show of hands because I think we kind of all touched on this already. But what are your feelings on the capital equipment fund versus using equipment certificates? So a show of hands for capital equipment fund.
I want to start by saying something.
Yeah, go.
All right, this isn't a slam on anything other than words mean things. Not that I don't care about everybody in here, but I don't care about anybody's feelings in this room. Okay?
I know.
I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know what your thoughts are. So substitute, please. the word thoughts instead of feelings. Then we can have a rational conversation. Now ask the question.
Okay, Professor.
Words mean things.
Who favors a capital equipment fund?
Can I ask one more question
Oh,
before
no.
we? No, before we. I mean, feelings are one thing, stop hurting. No. For the Third Street Bridge grant, that has to be used this next year, correct?
I don't know the answer. I don't know enough to answer that. From what I understand from Dan, we're not bound, but it's better to get that done sooner rather than later because of our transition from a small city
Yep.
to a state-made city.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
been the recommendation from the state.
Okay, and what was that grant dollar amount again?
Well, they pay for everything except for 20,000 for a straight bridge replacement. We have some money built into the levee component of the bridge for the flood walls, so that's why you see a number of, I think it's 300 in there, so.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yep.
I actually have a question for Brent on this fund versus certificates. Can you give me a little bit more, like a pro-con list on both sides of that
Sure, so,
before I have to raise my hand?
I would say
7 minutes.
You got 3
the
minutes.
certificate, the nice, and I guess I was probably the chief cheerleader for the certificates, many years ago, because we were using cash, but we didn't really have enough cash to make the big purchases. And so we moved to the certificate so we could get all the equipment that we needed, and then it's kind of like you paid over time. It's like buying a car. It's like, yes, if we, all things considered, if you could pay cash and not have the car loan payment, that's perfect. But at the time, and the time might be the same now, but like trying to reduce the impact to the tax levy or your personal budget through the loan is what you're trying to consider. When you do that fund though, whether it's like say with the car loan, is you're paying interest on that, and so and I also think it puts a lot of pressure to be right, as in like, okay, we're gonna buy all this equipment in 2023. It better be the exact pieces of equipment that we need because we're not gonna go back and buy this. And I think it puts a little bit of pressure, frankly, on the council. It's like you're always gonna be critical of purchases, but I think it just escalates things when it's like, well, it's more than just one car. You're gonna buy like a car, a pickup, a four-wheeler, a payloader, and so, and it puts some pressure on Chad and his team. He gave me an example of like a piece of equipment that they bought the city bought a few years ago that in hindsight, now knowing kind of some new dynamics, they maybe make a different type of purchase. And so, but it's more affordable for the city to have a fund. It's just, can you afford that efficiency, Because it's cheaper to buy in cash, but if you're, same, follow that car analogy, if you pay in cash, but then you don't have enough money to pay for that monthly gas bill or electric or groceries, then you're really not doing yourself any favor because you've taken away all your spending.
So if we start for this fund, is there anything lawfully, like we shouldn't have more than this amount in it, or we can just shovel as much into it as we want to?
Yeah, it's just like this. It's like the street maintenance.
Right.
Fund. I mean, we want to have a plan and say, well, we're not just kind of
Right.
dumping. So we have these projects. We essentially have the same thing for the fire department. We have a fire department fund.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens that when they need equipment, it's usually like $1 million, so it's hard to
Yeah.
fund that out of cash.
At the risk of interrupting you,
Yeah,
asking
no,
one
that's
question, did we fund the fire truck using an equipment certificate?
Yes, we did.
We, really the only things that we don't are, it's, fit, like, I think we did the command vehicle with cash.
Okay. Okay, so again, show of hands, a preference for a capital equipment fund.
I'm leaning towards that. It's something I need to learn a lot more about.
Okay.
I'm not
So
right there,
what
but I
would
mean-
be, like, yeah, this,
Okay.
it's getting me to think about it a different way.
Yeah.
But for me, what would be helpful is in a future, that presentation that includes some of these is almost seeing like the pros and cons of the two, or like other than what we've talked about, but why do some cities do it this way, why did some do it that way? Because one of the questions that I have, and I don't expect it to be answered right now, is does a capital equipment fund allow you to be like, yeah, we're gonna buy this, and maybe in 3 years, we at least wanna have the option to say, oh, we outgrew it, or we don't really need it this way anymore, or
Yeah, you can do that.
can you do that with both kind of streams?
I think the way that I'm thinking about this is we just build you a model showing both. So
Yeah,
equipment certificate with these 10 pieces of equipment, you're gonna pay this much a year, which is principal and interest.
Yep.
And then we're gonna show you what it would look like to build cash to do those same 10 purchases.
Yep.
And there'll be
Then
some,
timeline
but
with budget, you
also,
know what I
like,
mean?
right.
Because the equipment certificate is, you're getting a loan, right? Send out a line, money's in the pot. So if we do the equipment fund, how many years is this gonna be?
Yep.
What's the impact then to the residents that we are,
And how much are we gonna put in every year?
yeah, that's what I mean, how much goes in every year?
how much we're gonna put in every year, and then that'll, in essence, based on that amount, that'll defer some of the purchases, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll build 2 models for you, and then you can decide which one feels like the better fit.
Yeah, I'm not against an equipment certificate. My preference would be to have a fund, much like how we're financing the street improvement plan. But I think equipment certificate would be for something larger, a fire truck. And in more rare instances, I'd rather have the money.
I agree with what Lori said, though, it's a new way of thinking about it, so I do want just a little bit more of that information before saying like, yep, that's the way I gotta go. But I'm really happy to look at it, because it's a new way of looking at it.
Absolutely wanna get more information on it.
Okay, can we do the next one real quickly before we adjourn? Are there any specific pieces of equipment or improvements you want added or removed or need additional information on? Joy?
I noticed that we continue to put in oversizing for sanitary at 200K and water at 150K, and I understand the reason why we do that because of developments. We want to make sure we're being proactive there. Can I just get some information on how much we've been spending in the past? And just to, we're allocating the same amount going forward, and just to sanity check whether that's right. That's it.
Lori?
No. Glenn?
Chipper.
Christie?
Mine was also the chipper, which is kind of funny, but, and then we do, I was just looking, 2023 to 2024, we got a really hefty year of what looks like purchases next year, and 2024 is a pretty lean year, so if there's things, again, with when we're looking at inflationary things, can we pull it out, can we push it off, can we wait, can we not? Just taking another look at that. I realize it's the sum of the whole at the end, but at the same point, if we wanna start, like, really fine tuning this and just taking a look, and if we don't have the building built yet, I mean, we can put some chippers in there later.
Okay, just a couple things for me, it relates more to the budget than this, but I'm in favor of keeping the debt gap. For kind of the reason of this, of seeing so much stuff coming down the pipe, and so that it's not that roller coaster of a budget into perpetuity. I don't think, as laid out for 2023, kind of what Christy was just saying, I think public services, building and fire department improvements and all of this public services equipment is a lot in 1 year. So I'd like to see that evened out a little bit. As far as what I want to see, maybe not added, but I want to make sure that we're mindful, is I want to make sure that we're mindful of significant building maintenance items. Does Church by the River need a new furnace? Do they need a new roof on the fire station? Like, where are we in terms of like long-term investments? I don't want ever in the city of Carver have another village hall situation where something gets too far gone, where we're kind of put in a really crummy place.
We're gonna put caution tape around it?
And bulldoze it.
Literally, yeah.
So, maybe we can finish this real quick. Any other general observations?
I have a question regarding, the street improvement and street maintenance fund. I know we penciled in 5 years for that. What about 8 years out? Is it gonna be 820,000?
It's a good question for in 4 years' time.
We'll have as far as we can go out with that. and it'll have a column for the street maintenance on the new plan.
Okay, thank you.
But we don't, just a real quick answer, I don't believe that's gonna be necessary just based on what our current documents show.
We'll also be getting some state aid now that we're over 5,000 people, so that'll help.
Okay.
Anybody else with general observations?
My final is that, while I'm not opposed to using some or part or all of the debt gap, I'm not ready to say like a blanket statement of
Yeah.
like, let's just use the gap and we're gonna consider it cash on hand, because it's not. So
Yeah.
if things are going up, so some of these things we might need are gonna have to fill in with that debt gap.
I think we're on the same page there, we're not saying, it's 184, let's spend 200 instead, so, yeah. I think you get the theory,
Yes,
the
thank you very
idea
much.
of the room. Okay, anybody else? Make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, we'll save everything else for the meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion by Councilmember Henry, I'll second, and a second by Councilmember Sayer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.